Hi. I know this is a bit different than what you're probably expecting, but we are back with Films and Fandoms with Kaylee. Yeah, Alex wasn't able to join today, and she might join on and off, just depending on what kind of how she's feeling. But yeah, I'll let you know if she's going to be joining. But for now, it's just going to be me. And I apologize about the background. Usually, I have like a fancier background. For some reason, StreamYard decided it's not letting me use it, but I wanted to get this episode out. So we just rolling. We just rolling with the punches. So tonight, today's episode of Films and Fandoms, I'm going to start off first by thanking our sponsors, navco.org. And you can support the podcast by buying a coffee on Ko-Fi. Films and Fandoms is our Ko-Fi. So if you want to support the podcast, help support Alex too, we are just going to keep cracking. So, apologize. I just say it so if my voice sounds a little funny, that's why. So, tonight's episode, we're going to go with a little bit of a Christmas in July theme. And if you know me, you know I've worked in customer service since I was 14 years old. At 19, I worked at a Target, got let go from Target, but I worked around the holidays. In the past 2 years, I've been working at an airport. Christmas music is the bane of a customer service person's existence. And I'm speaking that as a customer service person because you hear the same 5 songs all the time. They started early, and people can be kind of assholes. But anyways, we are going to be starting this episode of The Librarians, Season 1, Episode 4, and Santa's Midnight Run, hence the Christmas in July theme we're going. So, a bit of a summary for this episode. The Librarians must save Christmas after the Server Brotherhood kidnaps Santa. And this episode is directed by the one, the only, to take Frakes, Mr. Jonathan Frakes, aka Number One, as Alex would call him, aka Captain Riker from Star Trek. So yes, and the writers for this episode, we got the trio of John Rogers, Jeremy Bernstein, and Paul Goyat. So I'm just gonna get right into this episode because, of course, the opening of the classic Christmas music. Every Christmas episode of any TV show that's ever existed has Christmas music. My Christmas themed short, Howitzer Tales, The Appalachian Hills, A Song Without Words. You can find it on my YouTube. No, not my YouTube, the Ma Filmworks YouTube page. Anyway, so we open up with this, nice little soup kitchen. Santa's serving up some chili at the soup kitchen. And he stops a robbery. Now, I must say, an interesting casting choice that was made this episode was to cast Santa as horror legend Bruce Campbell. Not my first choice, I would say, to play Santa, but you know what? I absolutely love Bruce Campbell, especially as Santa in this episode. So props to him and to the casting department. And of course, the strawberry, it's a trap, and Santa gets nabbed. So, and then there, like, we get the title screen, and there's your shot of Lamia's heels. Which, how did she walk in those heels? Those things were like that fucking tall. I swear to God. So we see the Lits are now decorating. Well, more like Cassie and Ezekiel are decorating the annex for Christmas, while Jake is wrapping some presents. And Eve walks in, and she is pissed. She just wanted, chill. She does not want to celebrate Christmas. But I love how like cute Cassie is and how obsessed she gets over Christmas because it's like so wholesome. And uh yeah, it's so wholesome, and it reminds me a bit of Parker's Love for Christmas. Because we all know Parker from Leverage loves Christmas. So I just really like that. So, and we officially get Eve talking to the library, which probably means she's lost her mind since she's finally talking to the library. And so I like that. So Eva asked each of the characters, why they exactly like Christmas. And I feel like it's very fitting the explanations they give. Jake likes Christmas because, Christmas to him means family, hanging around his cousins and getting to a bar brawl. Which fucking Kane getting at a bar brawl on Christmas Eve. God damn it. Wrote a song about it. And you don't know what club song is? Look it up. Because in the lyrics, it says, "Oh, King nearly got in a fight, so they had to leave the bar." And he also has another song about beating the fuck out of some abusive asshole. But beside the point, um, yeah, and he also likes watching his nieces and nephews, tearing into presents and grandparents singing Christmas carols. So it's a little bit more like the nuclear family version of Christmas, and that's what Jake likes because I think it also goes into like not necessarily the nuclear family idea that Jake has when it comes to family, but he hasn't had like, it was like the one time you can actually like enjoy himself, and I think he could like get out of his head for a little bit was around Christmas when he could just have fun without like all this pressure to conform on him. Because like later in later episodes of the Librarians, we see that Jake he he describes himself as like having a mask. His genius is his mask that he wears. He hides it as to not like stand out because he was raised to not want to stand out, and he had one path that was the family business, which as we know is oil. And so I think it does make sense for Jake that he would say family because that's like he was raised a good old Oklahoma boy. Family is the most important thing there is out there, and you do anything for family. It doesn't matter like what they did, they're family. And I've personally, experienced myself where like not necessarily the pressure to conform. I was very fortunate to be raised by a mother who taught me to stand out and made sure that I was supported no matter what my interests were. Because I had some weird interests growing up. I am not gonna lie. And like every single like activity I did, from Girl Scouts to dancing to gymnastics, my mom was there supporting me. And the same she was with my brother. He was more the jock of the family, so he did basketball or baseball, football, and my mom supported him. And when I got active, my mom supported me. Hang on one second, my cat's playing with the pen. Get down! Not playing with the goddamn pen. Anyways, sorry about that interruption. So, and I think Jake, likes getting himself in trouble, and he knows, like, he enjoys getting in a bar fight. I think because he knows, it's part of like the conforming. You're expected to stand up to family, so to him it makes sense why he'd be getting in a bar brawl on Christmas Eve. Because that's usually when people are drunk, obnoxious assholes and try to start shit, not realizing now this is it. Don't do shit and get caught on a Friday. All right. Because then you got to spend the weekend in jail. Okay. Life lessons with Kaylee Santel. All right, moving on. So Cassie is actually kind of heartbreaking because she never really got to believe in Santa because her parents told her that Santa wasn't real at a young age. And I think that explains like why Cassie is so into like Christmas, because she's trying to hold on to that little joy that she has with Christmas. And of course, Ezekiel just likes stealing the Christmas presents because Ezekiel Jones, world's greatest thief. And I don't know if Mr. Dean Devlin's going to be watching this, but if you do watch this, Dean Devlin, why do you let Kane keep twirling shit? All right. This time he twirls scissors, which everyone knows in school you're told not to do that. Though now that makes me imagine Jake being the kid who would try. Jake was the kid in school, like me, who got caught reading books in class instead of paying attention to the lesson. But because he kept getting in trouble and everyone wanted to be, a little bit rebellious, he started twirling shit. That's my headcanon, and you can pry from it cold dead hands. Anyways, I love the little like phone that Jenkins, or like the phone that Jenkins is using to call Gretchen, aka Mrs. Claus, because it's literally like it's almost like they stuck like a payphone on like an IV so Jenkins can just wheel it around, be like, "No, Gretchen is not here." Like, why would he be here? And the way Cassie gets so excited, she's like, Santa Claus is missing. She's like, "Santa Claus is real." Then they get the Jenkins live, and he's explaining, how like Santa works. But I really like this concept. They kind of go into it a bit more in Librarians the next chapter, which I might be talking about later. I don't know. Anyways, so basically, like the gods, how they work is they're like avatars of goodwill. Well, they're like avatars that serve a particular purpose. You have in this case Santa, who is an avatar of goodwill, who with different incantations he controls with his talisman, which we're going to find out more about that later. And he spends all year gathering up goodwill and then delivering it on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And it's why everyone's cranky around the holidays, because everyone's running low on goodwill. Me personally, I just think people feel entitled and decide to be assholes because they know they can get away with it, and they think they're more important than other people. But that should be. I like how Jenkins is, and Cassie is like, "Mrs. Claus is real?" And then Jenkins is like, "Oh, shiny balls, yes." Like, he is so dumb with having to explain everything to these fucking kids. And then, of course, now they gotta go track down Santa. So they find out he's at the soup kitchen in London. Jenkins and Cassie go to the soup kitchen. And of course, the dude's speaking with Cockney of rhyming slang, which of course Jake knows that. And apparently, the old language he barely knows is Urdu. Urdu. Sorry, Urdu, because it's rusty. And Cassie just failing translate, just stop, stop. And Dean Devlin, I have another note for you. Look, we love Kane in that Southern boy accent that makes us swoon with even the simplest lines he says. He may be the smoothest motherfucker on the planet. I know you saw him in that line in Leverage Redemption season 3, the third episode, when he goes to flirt with the wheelchair user, the first compliment chair, and then talks about his cell phone. Be like, hey, something's wrong with my phone. She's like, oh, like, what's wrong with it? She's like, well, it doesn't have your number in it. Like, tell me that's not the smoothest fucking line you've ever heard being used. I'm Hamilton. And I wasn't even directed. I wasn't even directed. But okay. So Kane's the smoothest motherfucker on the planet. He has a heart of gold and food skills that would make grown men cry. And the fighting skills of a professional. But the one thing that man cannot do, and I'm not going to say what Alex said that one time. I know what you know. Yeah, I know you know what I'm talking about. The one thing Kane cannot do, fucking British accent. I do not know how I can explain it. He's too oaky. I, he's too oaky to do a British accent. And I mean this with all the love to Kane. Love the man. He can do a great many of things. British accents, I just don't think are one of them. Because he's too oaky. I don't know how to explain it. It's too oaky. But we love him for it. And we love it. So you know what? Please keep letting him do that. Just know we're probably going to make fun of him every single time. But we love him. Fucking Oklahoma. Anyways. And of course, we got, had to throw in the obligatory rubies, boobies rhyme. We all know that one. And yep, indeed, Santa got nabbed by Duroc, aka Serpent Brotherhood. And of course, we got the first hint that Jenkins knows who Duroc is, and we get the first hint of like what Jenkins' real identity is, because Jenkins is obviously not his real name. And basically, Jenkins reveals he knows Duroc, and that he knows his plan is to basically kill Santa at midnight, get all the power. And of course, we got the obligatory evil speech of evil. A little bit evil speech of evil. But I find it interesting Lamia's reaction when Santa's basically calling her out, like, I know why you're doing this. But you're going about this the wrong way. And it's a bad idea to do it this way. And you can see her like her breath gets kind of like shaky, because then we see in the season 1 finale when Duloc stabs her in the back, literally, she turns to him and is like, I loved you. And also, like in the premiere, the way she points out, she's like, like, look at like all this magic that is being hidden away that can be used to change the world. So I feel like Lamia is an interesting character that way, in that her motives, like, but I obviously like, if like we could use magic to solve everyone's problems, yeah, because why struggle? Why force a struggle on somebody that can be fixed? And if he had the power to be able to fix something, why not fix it? And but I also understand the library's viewpoint because with all this magic comes power, and as we kind of see, through Duloc, power corrupts, and it's so like I see the library's viewpoint where it's like no, like it's better that we have all this locked away so that way it don't get into the wrong hands. Because yeah, like would it be nice if everyone could use magic to help people, help some, yeah, but not everyone's as pure hearted and of good mind. And what happens if just that one person gets a power trip and they got a very powerful artifact? So yeah, I could understand both sides of the argument. You can't exactly say which one's the correct one, which I think is the interesting concept for librarians. Is so they don't necessarily describe the Serpent Brotherhood's motives as being necessarily wrong, but they want to keep the power that comes with having the artifacts. And that's where like the balance point is that causes us to root for the libraries, because the Serpent Brotherhood wants to rule everything when they could just help people instead of having to like hurt them too. And we also carried on with this episode. Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there, but and also we found out that mistletoe, poinsettia, and holly poison Santa. And I also like how basically Jake helps Cass because they're trying to now figure out where they're holding Santa basically, and Cassie is the only one who's been where they're holding Santa, so they have to rely on Cassie's memory. And she starts to spiral a bit, and Jake, he uh, helps her get back on track. They figure out that they're holding Santa in a place called the Chamberlain House. So I just realized this yesterday when I was rewatching this episode. So I have a feeling, now this is my theory. I don't want anyone assuming nothing based on what I'm about to say. This is my theory. It might not even be shown in season 1. It might not even be shown in season 2 of Librarians, the next chapter. So the house that Santa's being held at by Duloc and the Serpent Brotherhood is called the Chamberlain House. Now, it could be possible that that's just a reference to Sir Richard Chamberlain, who, as Leverage fans know, played Parker's sort of foster father, Archie Leach, sort of like a gentleman thief type, who unfortunately did pass away recently. And but my sort of theory, so it's either an Easter egg to Richard Chamberlain or this. So we know, so the main, or so the librarian, that the main focus of the librarians, the next chapter, the main librarian who is taking care of the Belgrade Annex / library, well, more like the annex. Anyways, his name is Vikram Chamberlain, same name as the house. And Jake describes the house as being Victorian, style house designed by Bevins and is, historical. So my I had to go on Wikipedia to look this up. So the Bevins that they're talking about is probably Charles L. Bevins, architect who was born in Manchester, England in the Victorian era and emigrated to the U.S., specifically Boston and then Rhode Island. So my theory, so this is I think a major spoiler for the last episode of Librarians, the next chapter. I believe it was titled and shit. I forget what the name of the episode was, but it's the most recent episode. And apparently, no, I'm gonna have to double check this episode, watch the episode to be sure. But I think Vikram might have a kid. Either way, I think a descendant of Vikram might have run the house or like made the Chamberlain houses. It probably had its last name. I don't entirely know how that worked, but my theory though is that the Chamberlain house and Vikram Chamberlain are connected in some way, shape, or form. And since the time travel, maybe it has to do with the time travel. I don't know. I don't pretend to know the mind of Dean Devlin, but that's my theory. And I personally think it would be kind of cool if you tie it all the way back to the beginning by having the Chamberlain house that they're at in this episode be like the house that Vikram's son stayed in. Because I do believe, and he does reveal in the time travel episode that he has a son. Uh, I need to watch the episode. I'm a little behind, I know, but yeah. So that's my theory. Moving on. So I like Jake's quote here where he says, "Architecture is just art we live in. Why does no one get that?" Because I personally experienced this because not only was I in Boston back in January for my birthday for my 22nd birthday and got to live out my museum dreams. I also in May went to see the Librarians the next chapter before everyone else did at the fan screening at the Morgan Library Museum in New York. So I honestly really loved the architecture of that building. It was beautiful inside and out. I absolutely loved it. All the books I was in like library heaven. I like walked in. I was like, so this is what they felt like walking into the library. And no, I'm never gonna stop talking about that because it was fucking magical. Okay, that was magic. And so, I don't know how they made Portland look like London. We're moving on, but yeah. So, of course, Duloc bus, Jake and Eve walking in to distract while Cassie and Ezekiel go get Santa. I like then how Lamia walks in and just like, "Hey, darling," and he's like, "Darling, you last time I saw you, you tried to murder me with the sword." And she's like, "I don't just get out the katana to murder anyone, cowboy. You're special." And then she wakes and he's into it. Jake, why? Why you fight with the woman trying to kill you? Oh, why? You got a dead way, boy? I mean, to be fair, if Lamia looked at me like that and spoke in that tone of voice to me, I too would melt. And I can't blame him, honestly. But then the chick turns into like a full blown fucking cat. And I say this as my cat is staring at me right now off to the side. But he just starts like tossing like vases in the air and like all this stuff. It's like, stop it, stop. The long as I stop. And of course, do like realize that like they're stalling. Go to Santa. And of course, they meet back up. Cassie's fangirling, and turns out Ezekiel's on the naughty list. Which is that really a shock to anyone that Ezekiel Jones is on the naughty list? Right. And also, we see when Santa introduces himself to Jake, Santa says that he knows both incarnations of Jacob Stone, which my personal theory, my personal one, is that was hinting at the Stone triplet theory. And once again, for the people in the back, in case you aren't aware, the Stone triplet theory is a handcannon devised by mostly Caniacs, probably. I will admittedly don't know who started this whole idea, but my my personal, well, it's not like my personal one, but like this is a personal one I believe in. So the theory is that Jacob Stone, or like the three most popular Christian King, or three of Christian King's characters, are triplets. We got Jacob Stone, uh, Alex Walker, and we got Elliot Spencer. Now, Elliot, now the theory says that like the three of them are triplets separated at birth. So how I tie that in with knowing all the background of most, or not all the background, but knowing basics of each of the characters. My personal theory is that to explain the Stone triplet theory and how it could work with what's established already in the media, we got Jacob Stone, or we got Isaac Stone, Jacob's father, and uh, Jacob's mom. We're just gonna call her mom because we don't get her what her real name is. They had triplet boys. Now they're obviously poor. Well, they're like kind of poor, but they also like didn't want to have to deal with raising three boys. So, because as far as we know, Jake doesn't have any siblings. My theory is that Mama Stone had triplet boys. She realized she couldn't care for all three boys because maybe this is like when the oil family business was starting and they might have hit a rough patch. For whatever reason, they couldn't support him. So they took Elliot to the hospital where Billy Spencer and Mama Spencer adopted Elliot, and Uncle Danny took in Alex, because all we know about Alex's backstory is that Uncle Danny raised him when he didn't, like when his folks couldn't. It's not clear whether they died or if we don't know, but that's my personal theory. Well, either it was Uncle Danny or it was some unnamed mother and father who adopted Alex, and then something happened to them, causing him to be raised by Uncle Danny. And so that's my personal theory about the Stone Triplet theory and how it could still work in the media with what's established about their backstories. And though probably in this case, I'm gonna say it was probably, I don't know how to explain like the both incarnations with the Stone Triplet theory, but I do wonder if Jake remembers only uh, Alex, and he doesn't remember Elliot because, or maybe he does remember all three, or like the other two, but no. I think actual canon it's supposed to be like the alias that Alex or that Jacob uses when he publishes because he's too scared to publish under his own name. So yeah, that's canon. My head canon. I think is better. Anyways, I'm kidding. I do like my head canon though. So it turns out Eve taking Santa's hat was a bad idea, and putting it on Ezekiel's head was a bad idea because now they're gonna get to the North Pole to deposit the goodwill. So off to find Santa's sleigh, which got stolen. And of course, now we start learning about some different incarnations of Santa. First, we learn Nicholas the Wonder Maker, who hides dolls and boots and is a prankster. Eve gets him to snap out of it. And because Santa is poisoned and away from his talisman, he is having a hard time keeping all of his incarnations straight. And turns out the hat makes Ezekiel nice, which he hates. And Eve, as we establish, hates Christmas. And yeah, so Santa speeds up the vehicle, but he still needs gas in the vehicle to get it to go fast. So they're running out of gas, causing Jack and staff to send Ezekiel and Cassie to an airport to get the plane to get to Alaska so that Cassie or they can deposit the goodwill on a ley line, get it through all the world. While Jake and Eve while Jake gets a car, meets Santa and Eve at a bar. And now we find out that Eve's not a fan of Christmas is because she moved from army base to army base as a kid. Uh, so she never had a place where she belonged. And that she came disillusioned that because she was going to all these places and they were celebrating, but she didn't feel like there was anything to celebrate because people were hurting each other. And the only reason she was in these places was because people were hurting each other. And yeah, I find that interesting. And I can understand the concept of like not feeling like you belong somewhere because I've experienced that personally. This is one of like the first times in my life where like I felt like I belonged somewhere. And so I relate to that hard. And of course, uh, Ezekiel has to fuck up the plan by sending the pilot away to go celebrate Christmas with his fiance. And we meet another incarnation of Santa, which is Odin, the god of battle and the Viking god of battle and death. And of course, he's drinking, gets cut off, doesn't like that he got cut off. So, Jake and Santa start a bar fight. Because what better way to spend Christmas Eve than at a bar fight? Anyways, Eve scolds them both, and then now Santa's got to find the plane, except they get boarded by Lamia and Dulac. A little bit of a tussle ensues. Santa's not doing hot, and neither are the lids because they all got knives to their throats. Well, more like blades. And they kind of trick Dulac into putting on the talisman to like get him to send Lamia away, and then like the plane starts going down, and then Dulac gets the talisman off. They put it back on Santa, but Dulac Eve like keeps Dulac from falling out the plane, and he lets go, falling down. And so, because Santa is not feeling so hot, he can't fly the plane, which means even Jacob got to do it. Luckily, Jake knows of an old pipeline survey station because there happened to be near this pipeline, and he used to survey. So he, helps Eve find the station. They get Santa in, and of course, now they got to figure out how to get the goodwill out to everyone because Santa isn't able to do it himself as he's been weakened by being away from his talisman and being poisoned. So they're like, "What do we do?" And Santa says that, like, someone else has to do it. And of course, everyone's volunteering, but then uh Santa's like, no, like the only person who can do it is the child born on Christmas Eve, which is Eve Baird. And that's like another, she was born on Christmas Eve. That's where we find that out. So she essentially gets split like all over the world, delivering like this goodwill and inspires like a bunch of people, saves lives, and she survives. And of course, and of course, she's got to be a little tricky about it because the whole time she's been telling Nick like, "Don't like ho ho ho," and then he goes to do it again after Eve's like comes back to reality or comes back, and she like tells us to stop. Then she like winks, and they go. So they're back at the library now, and and Eve's telling Jenkins, telling Nick I said hi, and he's just like, I'm just gonna keep it low key, keep it chill for Christmas, and of course they'll let's surprise her by throwing a surprise birthday party, which I think she was secretly happy about, and it turns out everyone got what they wanted for Christmas because Jake got in a bar brawl. Ezekiel got to see what it feels like to be nice. He hated it. And Cassie got to believe in Santa, for a night. So that I think was a pretty cool way to end this episode with the let's celebrating Christmas and found family because who doesn't love a good found family trope? So yeah, I feel like this is an episode that's slightly a different take on Christmas. As usually, it's about like getting back home for the holidays. But in this case, it's not about getting home from the holidays. It's about, just being together and saving Christmas. And Jenkins, I will forever love John LaRoquette as Jenkins. It's that deadpan delivery. I just fucking love it because it makes like seemingly mundane lines. Like it is supposed to be mundane, but it makes the line so much funnier. And Jake's facial expressions. Yeah. And it was kind of nice seeing Ezekiel be good and hating it. But yeah, I must say, I really enjoyed this episode. And it's always nice to have a fun Christmas episode, and everyone loves Sound Family. So, I mean, I don't really have any other thoughts about this episode. Just, I thought it was really a nice like segue. I like how so far each or like the past couple episodes or like this episode and the last episode all tie into the finale. As we find out in the first episode, or not the first episode, the third episode, and the Horns of a Dilemma. The uh, the thread uh, comes into play for the finale, and actually, you don't think it will, but the fact that Eve had her mind split between like all these different like places to deliver goodwill also comes into play for the season 1 finale. And as we go through each of these episodes until we get to the season 1 finale, I'll explain like what the tie-in, and in last episode, of course, I'll explain it all. But yeah, I just think this was a very sweet episode and a nice way to uh kind of kick back sort of my revival. And I'm going to fix the background for the next episode. But all right, so since that is really all I have for today, I want to once again thank our sponsor, NAFCA.org. If you want to support the podcast and buy a coffee to support us, you can go on Ko-Fi at Films and Fandoms. The proceeds do go to both me and Alex, though I'm probably going to give most of the proceeds to her to help Alex get back on track and so she can be her best self. We also have a Discord. That's the invite code if you want to join our Discord. We also have an Instagram, FN Fandoms, with Kaylee and Lex. Our Twitter is FN Fandoms. Our Facebook is Films and Fandoms. You could follow, or you can go on my website, Kaylee at santelacting.com. You can go on my Twitter, MissMoveFan_67. Also my TikTok, MovieFan_67. You could follow Alex on Instagram at Alex_the_Alley_Cat. Twitter, Alex the Alley Cat. Same on TikTok. And you can go support our friends at My Filmworks. I just realized I need to fix that. I'll do that next time. But yeah, we're going to be supporting that up. Yeah, go and check out our friends there. Get to see what all kind of fun stuff they're doing. Because it's some exciting stuff, I'll tell you. So, the next Librarians episode, if I remember correctly, is in the Apple and Discord, but should be quite hilarious and interesting for me to talk about. The next podcast episode will be next week, as I'm going to be starting to do a weekly format with these episodes to just try and get caught up on the episodes, but also try to keep us consistency with them. Even if I do have to go do it by myself while Alex kind of recovers. You're a little late, Adam. Shout out to Typist Fat Production. Shout out to Typist Fat Productions. And hi, Perry. Ignore the background. I got to fix that. Might be talk. Yeah. Yeah. I may. I may be talking to you about that later, Perry, about the background. But anyways, yep. So I think that's actually going to kind of wrap up the episode for today, believe it or not. um, yeah, next week will be a new podcast episode. I have to figure out what episode I'm going to be doing, but either way, it's going to be fun, and I'm excited. So I feel bad cutting it off, guys, but that's all I got for tonight. So I'll see ya all in the next episode. So bye bye, guys. Ask me the question on Discord. All right, love you guys.